Welcome back everyone, and thank you for tuning into the channel where we explore the hidden stories behind everyday objects that quietly hold unbelievable value. And today we're diving deep into one of the most talked about, debated, and legendary modern coin stories in American numismatics. The 1982 D1 cent that has been whispered about in collector circles as a coin that can command a jaw-dropping $15 million, a claim that sounds impossible at first because it's just a penny. Something people toss into jars, leave in cup holders, or ignore on sidewalks, yet when you peel back the layers of history, production chaos, metal transitions, minting mistakes, and the psychology of rarity and desire, you begin to understand how a small copper disc from Denver in 1982 could theoretically become one of the most valuable coins in existence, not because it was meant to be special, but because it was never supposed to exist in the first place, and that contradiction is exactly where extraordinary value is born, because 1982 was one of the most turbulent years in the history of the United States Mint, a year defined by economic pressure, rising metal costs, rushed decisions, and overlapping production standards that created a perfect storm for errors and anomalies, especially for the Lincoln cent, which had been made primarily of bronze for decades but suddenly became too expensive to produce as copper prices surged, forcing the mint to switch compositions mid-year. From the traditional 95% copper-bronze alloy to a cheaper copper-plated zinc planchet, and this transition was not clean, not orderly, and not carefully segmented by mint or date. Instead it was messy, overlapping, and filled with human and mechanical variables that allowed unintended combinations to slip through, and the Denver Mint, identified by the D mint mark, was right in the middle of this storm, striking millions of cents while equipment was being recalibrated, dies were swapped. Planchets from different compositions were stored and fed into presses, and date styles were changed, because 1982 is also the year when both large date and small date logotypes were used, resulting in 7 officially recognized varieties when you combine mint marks, date styles, and compositions, and that alone makes 1982 a magnet for collectors. But what elevates one particular hypothetical 1982 D cent into the realm of extreme value is the possibility of an error stacking scenario so improbable that it borders on the miraculous, a scenario where multiple minting mistakes and transitional anomalies coexist in a single surviving coin, something that would redefine what collectors are willing to pay, because value at the highest level is not driven by face value, not even by precious metal content, but by uniqueness, by story, by the impossibility of repetition, and by the intense competition among elite collectors who want to own something no one else can ever have. So let's unravel the core of the legend, starting with the most critical factor, the metal composition, because one of the most famous transitional errors ever discussed is the 1982 D small date struck on a bronze planchet, a coin that according to official mint records should not exist at all, because the Denver Mint was not supposed to strike any small date cents in bronze. Yet at least one such coin has been confirmed, authenticated, and widely publicized, already valued into 6 figures, and in speculative discussions, if a perfect specimen with additional anomalies were to surface, values could escalate exponentially, because bronze planchets were supposed to be phased out, and zinc planchets were intended to dominate, but leftover bronze blanks could have been accidentally fed into presses that were already equipped with small date dies, creating a forbidden combination. And when a coin exists outside official documentation, it becomes a numismatic outlaw, something that defies the system, and that defiance is intoxicating to collectors, because it proves that despite rigid controls, human systems are imperfect, and imperfection is where rarity thrives. And then you add the mint mark dimension, because Denver Mint coins carry a different production history than Philadelphia coins, with different presses, different oversight, and different planchet supply chains. So a Denver small date bronze cent is not just rare, it's anomalous, and now imagine that same coin also exhibiting a dramatic double die error, where the date, the lettering, or Lincoln's profile shows clear doubling due to misalignment during the hubbing process, and unlike minor machine doubling, true double dies are created at the die level and replicate identically across coins struck from that die. But when only 1 or 2 examples survive because the die was quickly retired or corrected, the value skyrockets. And in the case of 1982, when the mint was under pressure to push out massive quantities of cents quickly, quality control was not always meticulous, and double dies could slip through unnoticed, especially if the doubling was subtle or if inspectors were more focused on meeting quotas than scrutinizing details, and collectors today know how to distinguish true doubled dies from worthless forms of doubling, and when a genuine doubled die aligns with a forbidden composition and date style, the multiplier effect on value is enormous, because each layer of rarity doesn't just add value, it multiplies it. And then there's the possibility of off-metal errors, where a cent is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a dime or foreign coin blank, and while this is already rare, combining it with a transitional year like 1982 pushes it into legendary territory, because the mint was handling multiple planchet types simultaneously, and a zinc core cent struck on an incorrect alloy or thickness could reveal mismatched weight, diameter, and sound, further distinguishing it from normal issues. And if such a coin also retained a clear 1982D small date imprint with strong details, it would be instantly recognizable as something extraordinary, and then you factor in strike quality, because most error coins suffer from weak strikes or distorted designs, but if a hypothetical 1982D cent were sharply struck, fully detailed, and preserved in near-perfect condition, the paradox would be irresistible, a flawless presentation of a fundamentally flawed process. And that contrast alone would make it museum-worthy, but the story doesn't stop at physical errors, because provenance matters immensely at the top end of the market, and a coin discovered in circulation, perhaps by a worker, a child, or an unsuspecting collector who later realized its significance, carries a romantic narrative that adds emotional value, especially if it can be traced back through credible authentication, grading, and documentation, and when a coin is unique or nearly unique, auction dynamics change completely, because traditional price guides no longer apply. There are no comparables, no benchmarks, no ceiling, only what the wealthiest and most passionate collectors are willing to pay to outbid each other, and in private treaty sales, where billionaires and institutions negotiate discreetly, numbers can reach levels that seem absurd to outsiders, but make perfect sense within that rarefied world, and that's where figures like $15 million enter the conversation, not as guaranteed prices, but as expressions of theoretical value in a market where scarcity is absolute. And it's important to understand that at that level, the coin is no longer just a coin, it's an artifact, a conversation piece, a symbol of exclusivity, and sometimes even an investment hedge, because ultra-rare tangible assets often behave differently than traditional markets. And wealthy collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying the right to own a story no one else can tell, and the 1982D cent story is particularly compelling because it sits at the intersection of modern familiarity and hidden rarity. It's not an ancient gold stater or a medieval coin with a long recorded history, it's something that could still be sitting unnoticed in a jar somewhere, which fuels endless searching and speculation, and that sense of possibility keeps the legend alive. Because every time someone weighs a penny, checks the date style, or listens for the ring of bronze versus the dull thud of zinc, they are participating in a modern treasure hunt, and the psychology of that hunt feeds directly into value, because demand is not just about ownership, it's about the chase, and the idea that a $15 million penny could still be out there transforms ordinary change into potential destiny. And then there's the role of grading services, because authentication by top-tier grading companies is essential for legitimacy, and when a coin of unprecedented rarity is certified, encapsulated, and given a high grade, the market responds with confidence, because trust is established, and trust is the foundation of high-value transactions. And if such a coin were to be graded as mint state with minimal flaws, the price would not just reflect rarity, it would reflect condition rarity, which is even more powerful, because many error coins exist only in circulated or damaged states, and pristine examples are exponentially scarcer. And then consider the broader historical context, because 1982 represents a turning point in American coinage, the end of the classic bronze cent era, a shift driven by economic reality, and coins that mark transitions often become symbols of change, and symbolic coins carry premium appeal, because they encapsulate moments when systems evolve, and collectors love milestones. Next, 1999 1-cent coin. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating modern coin mysteries of all time, the story of a 1999 1-cent coin that has been rumored, theorized, and passionately debated as being worth as much as $12 million, a penny that most people would never look at twice, a coin you've probably held in your hand countless times, dropped into a jar, or spent without a second thought, yet under the right circumstances, with the right combination of errors, mistakes, transitional anomalies, and extraordinary coincidences, that humble 1999 cent transforms from pocket change into a numismatic unicorn, a once-in-a-generation discovery that could redefine modern coin collecting. And to understand how such an astronomical value is even remotely possible, we have to step back into the context of the late 1990s, a time when the United States Mint was operating at massive scale, striking billions of coins each year, driven by economic expansion, population growth, and increasing demand for circulating coinage. And in that environment, speed and volume often took priority over perfection, which is where mistakes are born, because when systems are pushed to their limits, tiny errors can slip through, and when those errors align in just the right way, they create rarity, and rarity is the single most powerful force in determining value, especially in modern coins where most issues are otherwise common. And the 1999 Lincoln cent sits at a fascinating crossroads in minting history, because while it was not officially a transition year like 1982, it was a period of experimentation, preparation, and subtle change behind the scenes, particularly related to dies, hub designs, planchet sourcing, and quality control processes that were evolving in anticipation of the new millennium. And that background sets the stage for a variety of extraordinary mistakes that could theoretically converge in one single coin, elevating it into legendary status. Starting with one of the most famous and proven error types associated with 1999 cents, the wide AM reverse, an error that has already cemented 1999 as a key date among modern collectors, because the mint used two different reverse designs for Lincoln cents, one intended for proof coins and one intended for circulation. And the proof reverse features a wider spacing between the letters A and M in the word America, while the circulation reverse has those letters nearly touching, and in 1999, a small number of circulation strikes were mistakenly produced using proof reverse dies, creating the now famous 1999 wide AM cent, a coin that has been authenticated and sold for significant sums even in circulated condition, and when found in pristine mint state, its value climbs dramatically. But while existing wide AM cents are valuable, they are not worth millions on their own. So the question becomes, what happens when that known error becomes only one layer of a much larger anomaly, because the highest values in numismatics are achieved not by single errors, but by stacks of improbabilities, where multiple independent mistakes occur on the same coin, creating something so unlikely that it may never be replicated again. And one of the most powerful possibilities involves the planchet itself, because while standard 1999 cents were struck on copper-plated zinc planchets, the mint also handles a wide variety of planchets for other denominations and for experimental, foreign, or pattern purposes, and history has shown that wrong planchet errors do occur, sometimes resulting in cents struck on dime planchets, foreign coin blanks, or even experimental alloys. And if a 1999 cent were struck on a planchet of the wrong metal composition, particularly one that significantly altered its weight, thickness, or electromagnetic properties, that alone would make it extraordinarily rare. But if that wrong planchet strike also carried a wide AM reverse, the rarity would multiply. Because now you have two unrelated mistakes intersecting, and collectors place immense value on that kind of convergence, because it demonstrates systemic failure across multiple stages of production. And then there is the possibility of a transitional or experimental alloy, because in the late 1990s the mint was researching cost-saving measures and alternative metals, testing different compositions to prepare for future changes. And while most experimental strikes are tightly controlled, history shows that a small number can escape into circulation, either accidentally or through misclassification. And if a 1999 cent were struck on an undocumented experimental alloy, something that does not match known specifications for cents, and that anomaly could be verified through metallurgical analysis, the coin would instantly become a centerpiece of modern numismatic research. Because undocumented experimental pieces are among the most sought-after objects in the hobby, often commanding seven-figure prices when authenticated. And now imagine combining that with additional die errors, because die production itself is a complex process involving hubbing, polishing, alignment, and hardening, and mistakes at any stage can result in doubled dies, repunched mint marks, misaligned designs, or missing elements, and although the Philadelphia Mint does not use mint marks on cents, die anomalies can still produce dramatic visual effects, such as strong doubling on the date. Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or Lincoln's profile, and true double dies are among the most respected errors in the hobby because they are created at the die level rather than during striking, making them intentional mistakes embedded in the tool itself, and if a 1999 wide AM cent were also struck from a strong double die, especially one that went unnoticed and was quickly retired, resulting in only one or two surviving examples, the value would escalate dramatically, because collectors place immense premiums on unique or nearly unique double dies, particularly on popular dates, and then consider strike anomalies, such as off-center strikes, broad strikes, or multiple strikes, which occur when planchets are not properly seated during striking, and while many off-center strikes exist, a dramatic off-center strike that still retains a full readable date and design elements is far rarer, and if such a strike occurred on a coin already carrying a wide AM reverse and a wrong planchet composition, it would create a visually stunning artifact that tells the story of chaos at the press, and visual drama matters, because collectors are drawn not only to rarity but to obviousness, to errors that can be seen without magnification, and that aesthetic appeal directly influences value, and beyond physical errors, there is also the question of die pairing, because obverse and reverse dies are paired manually, and mismatched pairings can occur, and if a reverse die intended for a different year or purpose were accidentally paired with a 1999 obverse die, the result could be a mule, one of the most coveted error types in all of numismatics, because mules represent a fundamental breakdown in process, combining designs that were never meant to coexist, and mule coins are often unique, and unique coins exist in a market without limits, because when there is only one, the price is determined entirely by desire and competition, and in such cases, auction estimates become meaningless, because there is no precedent, and if a 1999 cent mule were discovered, especially one involving a proof reverse, experimental design, or foreign die, the numismatic world would erupt, because modern mules are exceptionally rare and command enormous attention, and then we have to consider the role of condition, because rarity alone is not enough to reach 8-figure values. Condition rarity is equally important, and most error coins suffer from damage, weak strikes, or circulation. But if a hypothetical 1999 cent with multiple major errors were preserved in near-perfect mint state, with original luster, sharp details, and minimal flaws, the paradox would be irresistible, because it would present a flawless surface born from flawed processes, and that contradiction is exactly what elite collectors crave, and condition is especially important in modern coins, because collectors expect high standards, and a mint state error coin from 1999 would stand out dramatically. And then there is the question of provenance, because the story of discovery adds intangible value, especially if the coin was found in circulation, perhaps in a roll from a bank, a vending machine return, or a childhood collection rediscovered years later, and such origin stories resonate deeply with the public, reinforcing the idea that treasure can be found anywhere. And when a coin's discovery can be documented through credible witnesses, dated photographs, and submission records, it builds trust and narrative power translates directly into market value, especially at the highest levels where collectors are not just buying objects, but stories they can tell, and when such a coin is authenticated by top-tier grading services, encapsulated, analyzed, and published in numismatic literature, it gains legitimacy, and legitimacy opens the door to elite buyers, museums, and institutions, and at that level, private sales often eclipse public auctions, because confidentiality and exclusivity become part of the appeal, and prices can climb into the tens of millions when two or more wealthy buyers decide they must have the same unique object. Next. 2014 D1 cent. Today we are stepping into one of the most controversial, fascinating, and imagination-stretching modern coin stories ever discussed, the idea that a 2014 D1 cent, a penny struck at the Denver Mint that most people would dismiss as ordinary pocket change, could under extraordinary circumstances be worth as much as $13 million, a number that sounds outrageous, impossible, and even laughable at first, yet when you begin to understand how value is actually created, In the world of elite numismatics, how errors stack, how rarity forms, how human systems fail, and how desire, competition, and uniqueness collide, the idea transforms from fantasy into a theoretical possibility that keeps collectors awake at night and searching endlessly through rolls of coins, because modern coin value is no longer just about age or metal, it is about anomalies, documentation, exclusivity, and stories that cannot be repeated, and the 2014 D-cent sits in a uniquely intriguing position in modern minting history, because it was produced during a time of massive automation, intense production quotas, experimental die technology, evolving quality control systems, and ongoing behind-the-scenes testing of materials, finishes, and processes that the public rarely hears about, and those hidden layers are exactly where extraordinary mistakes are born, because when systems are complex, the smallest failure can ripple outward and create something that was never supposed to exist, and coins that were never supposed to exist are the ones that command life-changing money, because the foundation of extreme value is impossibility, and 2014 may not look like a transition year on paper, but in practice it was a period where the mint was balancing traditional coinage with new tooling, laser-engraved dies, improved plating techniques, and tighter tolerances, all while producing billions of coins for circulation, and when speed, technology, and volume intersect, perfection becomes fragile, and fragility opens the door to rare errors, starting with planchet anomalies, because the modern Lincoln cent is struck on a copper-plated zinc planchet, a thin shell of copper over a zinc core, and that plating process is itself a complex industrial operation, and failures can occur at multiple stages, resulting in missing plating, partial plating, blistered surfaces, exposed zinc, or improperly bonded layers, and while minor plating errors are relatively common and not especially valuable, extreme plating failures that reveal structural weaknesses, internal voids, or unusual surface textures can be exceptionally rare, especially if they survive in high grade. And now imagine a 2014 D-cent struck on a planchet where the copper plating thickness is dramatically incorrect, either far thicker than normal or nearly absent on one side, creating a coin that weighs incorrectly, sounds different, reacts differently to environmental conditions, and presents a striking visual contrast. And if that same coin were also struck with other errors, the rarity multiplies exponentially, because collectors are not just counting errors, they are evaluating how unlikely it is for those errors to coexist, and one of the most powerful possibilities for the 2014 D-cent involves the wrong planchet scenario, where a cent is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or purpose, and while this is rarer in modern times due to automation, it is not impossible. Because the mint handles foreign contracts, experimental blanks, and multiple denominations in overlapping facilities, and history has shown that wrong planchet errors still escape detection, and if a 2014 D-cent were struck on a planchet of incorrect composition, thickness, or diameter, especially one associated with experimental alloys or foreign coinage, it would immediately become a standout anomaly, and if metallurgical analysis confirmed that the metal did not match any officially documented cent composition, the coin would enter the realm of undocumented experimental errors, which are among the most valuable objects in modern numismatics, because they represent physical evidence of processes that were never meant to be public, and undocumented experiments are incredibly difficult to authenticate, but once verified, they command immense respect and demand. And now layer onto that the possibility of die errors, because die creation in the modern era relies heavily on digital modeling, laser engraving, and hubbing processes that are precise but not infallible, and errors can occur during hub alignment, die polishing, or software translation, resulting in double dies, missing design elements, distorted lettering, or unusual relief, and while minor doubling is often dismissed, true double dies created during hubbing are rare and highly prized, especially in modern coins where collectors expect perfection, and a strong double die on a 2014 D-cent, particularly one affecting the date, mint mark, or Lincoln's profile, would already be significant, but when combined with other anomalies, it becomes something else entirely, because stacking errors transforms a coin from collectible to legendary, and then there is the mint mark itself, because the D-mint mark is part of the die, and errors involving mint marks can occur, including filled mint marks, distorted shapes, misplaced positioning, or even missing mint marks due to die polishing or clogging. And while missing mint marks on Denver cents are controversial, an authenticated example showing clear evidence of mint mark omission due to die preparation rather than wear would ignite intense debate and interest, especially if it appeared on a coin with additional confirmed errors, and then consider strike anomalies, because even with modern presses, misfeeds happen, and coins can be struck off-center, broad struck without a collar, or struck multiple times, and while many such errors exist, extreme examples that still preserve strong detail and full dates are much rarer, and visual impact matters tremendously, because collectors are drawn to errors they can immediately recognize, and a dramatically misstruck 2014 D cent that also carries wrong planchet characteristics and die anomalies would be visually unforgettable, a physical snapshot of mechanical chaos. And then there is the possibility of a mule error, one of the most coveted mistakes in all of coin collecting, where an obverse die is paired with a reverse die that was never meant to go together, and modern mules are exceedingly rare because of stricter controls, but they are not impossible, and if a 2014 cent obverse were paired with an incorrect reverse, perhaps from a different year, a proof design, a foreign coin, or an experimental reverse never released to the public, the resulting coin would be unique or nearly unique. And uniqueness is the ultimate driver of extreme value, because when only one example exists, the market has no ceiling, and price becomes a function of desire rather than precedent, and desire at the top end of collecting can be limitless, especially when wealthy individuals compete for ownership of something no one else can ever have, and condition plays a critical role here, because most error coins are damaged, weakly struck, or heavily circulated. But a 2014 D cent discovered in mint state, perhaps pulled from a sealed roll or mint bag, would represent condition rarity layered on top of error rarity, and that combination is extraordinarily powerful, because it offers both technical fascination and aesthetic appeal, and aesthetic appeal matters more than many people realize, because elite collectors want coins that not only tell a story but also look stunning when displayed, and modern mint state coins with full luster and sharp detail satisfy that desire perfectly. And beyond the physical coin itself, provenance becomes crucial, because the story of how a coin was discovered, authenticated, and preserved adds intangible value, especially if the discovery can be documented with photographs, timestamps, grading submissions, and witness accounts, and coins with strong provenance are trusted, discussed, written about, and showcased, which increases their visibility and desirability, and when a coin gains recognition in numismatic literature, auction catalogs, and collector forums, its value accelerates, because attention creates demand, and demand drives price, and at the highest levels of the market, private sales often exceed public auction results, because confidentiality, exclusivity, and personal negotiation become part of the appeal, and that is where figures like $13 million enter the conversation, not as guarantees, but as plausible outcomes when a unique modern era coin captures the imagination of the ultra-wealthy, because modern collectibles have proven time and again that age is not a requirement for value. Rarity is, and the idea that a 2014 penny could be worth more than gold, more than classic coins, and more than historic artifacts challenges traditional thinking, but history shows that markets evolve, and modern numismatics is increasingly driven by error coins, because they represent authenticity in an age of mass production. And there is something deeply compelling about holding a coin that proves even the most advanced systems can fail, and that failure becomes art, history, and investment all at once. And psychologically, error coins resonate because they feel human, they reflect imperfection, chance, and the idea that extraordinary things can emerge from ordinary circumstances. Last 2016 1 cent. Today we're diving into one of the boldest, most talked about, and most mind-bending modern coin theories in circulation today, the idea that a 2016 1 cent, a penny so recent it still feels brand new, could under the rarest and most extreme circumstances be worth as much as $14 million, a number that sounds unreal, impossible, and even ridiculous until you understand how modern numismatics actually works, how errors compound, how impossibilities are born inside massive automated systems, and how a single overlooked mistake can transform a coin meant to be worth 1 cent into an object of obsession for elite collectors, museums, and private investors around the world, because value at the highest level is not about age or metal, it is about uniqueness, documentation, story, and the collision of events that should statistically never happen together. And the 2016 cent exists at a fascinating moment in mint history, because it was struck during an era of hyper-efficiency, extreme automation, laser-engraved dies, computer-controlled presses, and production volumes so massive that billions of coins flowed through the system annually. And while that level of technology reduces common errors, it paradoxically increases the value of rare ones, because when mistakes occur in a system designed to eliminate mistakes, those mistakes become exponentially rarer. And rarity is the foundation of extraordinary worth, and the 2016 1 cent, struck primarily in copper-plated zinc with nearly identical specifications across billions of examples, becomes a blank canvas for what numismatists call compound error scenarios, where multiple independent failures occur on the same coin, creating something so statistically unlikely that it borders on the miraculous. And to understand how a $14 million valuation becomes conceivable, we have to explore each layer of possibility, starting with planchet anomalies, because even in modern times, planchets are produced separately from striking, involving rolling, punching, annealing, cleaning, plating, and inspection, and each step introduces potential failure points, and the copper plating process used for modern cents is especially vulnerable to subtle defects, because the copper layer is extremely thin, and failures can include incomplete plating, blistering, peeling, internal voids, contamination, or improper bonding to the zinc core. And while small plating errors are common and worth little, extreme failures where large sections of zinc are exposed, or where the copper layer is dramatically thicker or uneven, resulting in incorrect weight and altered electromagnetic signatures, are far rarer. And now imagine a 2016 cent struck on a planchet with a severe plating defect that alters not just appearance but physical properties, a coin that weighs outside tolerance, sounds different when dropped, corrodes differently, and visually displays raw industrial error. And if that coin were discovered in uncirculated condition, the rarity would already be notable. But that is only the beginning, because the most valuable coins are born when planchet errors intersect with die errors, and die production in the modern era relies heavily on digital sculpting, laser engraving, hubbing, and polishing. And while this process is precise, it is not immune to mistakes, because alignment errors during hubbing can create true double dies, where design elements are duplicated in a clearly defined and collectible way, and modern double dies are exceptionally rare compared to older eras, making them especially desirable. And a strong double die affecting the date 2016, the word Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or Lincoln's profile would be instantly recognizable to experienced collectors. And if such a double die appeared on a coin already exhibiting extreme planchet anomalies, the compounding effect on rarity would be dramatic, because collectors value error stacking not linearly but exponentially. And then there is the mintmark dimension, because the D-mintmark is part of the die itself, and errors involving mintmarks can include distorted shapes, filled interiors, misplaced positioning, or even apparent absence due to die polishing or clogging. And while missing mintmarks on Denver coins are controversial and heavily scrutinized, an authenticated example showing clear die state evidence rather than post-strike wear would ignite intense interest, especially if paired with other verified errors. And then consider strike errors, because even with modern presses, misfeeds and mechanical failures still occur, resulting in off-center strikes, broad strikes without a collar, partial strikes, or multiple strikes. And while many off-center coins exist, dramatic off-center strikes that still retain a fully readable date and mintmark are far rarer. And visual impact matters immensely in the high-end market, because collectors respond strongly to errors they can see instantly. And a wildly misstruck 2016 cent that also shows wrong planchet characteristics and double die features would be visually unforgettable, a physical record of mechanical chaos frozen in copper and zinc. And then we arrive at one of the most powerful possibilities of all, the wrong planchet error, because while rare in modern times, cents are still occasionally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, foreign coinage, or experimental purposes. And the mint continues to produce coins for other countries, test alternative alloys, and conduct internal trials. And history has shown that wrong planchet errors do escape even the most controlled environments. And if a 2016 cent were struck on a planchet of incorrect composition, thickness, or diameter, particularly one associated with an undocumented experimental alloy, the implications would be enormous. Because undocumented experimental pieces are among the most valuable artifacts in modern numismatics, often commanding seven-figure prices on their own. And now imagine such a wrong planchet strike also carrying a double die obverse and a dramatic strike error, creating a coin that represents failure at multiple independent stages of production. And then there is the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest and most coveted mistakes in coin collecting, where an obverse die is paired with a reverse die never intended to go together. And while modern mule errors are exceedingly rare due to strict controls, they are not impossible, and when they occur, they are often unique. And uniqueness changes everything, because when only one example exists, there is no price guide, no comparison, no ceiling, only desire, competition, and negotiation. And if a 2016 cent obverse were paired with an incorrect reverse, perhaps from a proof design, a different denomination, a foreign contract, or an experimental reverse never released to the public, the numismatic world would erupt, because modern mules represent undeniable evidence of systemic breakdown, and collectors prize them not just for rarity but for what they reveal about the hidden complexity of mint operations. And condition rarity adds another crucial layer, because most error coins suffer from damage, weak strikes, or circulation wear, but a 2016 cent discovered in mint state, perhaps pulled from a sealed roll, mint bag, or original bank-wrapped roll, would represent the perfect storm of error, rarity, and condition. Rarity and condition matters enormously in modern coins, because expectations are high, and a pristine error coin with full luster and sharp detail becomes a paradox collectors cannot resist. Flawless surfaces born from flawed processes, and beyond the physical attributes, provenance plays a decisive role at the highest levels of valuation, because a coin's discovery story adds emotional and historical weight. And a 2016 cent found by an ordinary person, authenticated, documented, photographed, and submitted to grading services with a clear chain of custody becomes more than an object, it becomes a narrative, and narratives drive value, because elite collectors do not just buy coins, they buy stories they can own, tell, and pass down. And once such a coin is authenticated by top-tier grading services, analyzed metallurgically, and published in numismatic journals or major auction catalogs, its legitimacy solidifies, and legitimacy unlocks the attention of museums, institutions, and ultra-wealthy collectors. And at that level, private sales often exceed public auctions, because confidentiality, exclusivity, and personal desire take precedence over market transparency. And that is where figures like $14 million become plausible, not because of metal content or face value, but because of human psychology, competition, and the fear of never seeing such an object again. And it's important to understand that ultra-high-end collectibles operate under different rules, where price is not determined by utility but by meaning, symbolism, and scarcity. And modern error coins have proven repeatedly that age is not a prerequisite for value, rarity is. And the idea that a coin dated 2016 could rival the value of historic gold coins, artworks, or artifacts challenges traditional assumptions. But markets evolve, and modern numismatics increasingly values error coins because they represent authenticity in an era of mass production, proof that even the most advanced systems are imperfect. And there is something deeply compelling about that imperfection, because it reflects humanity itself, and collectors are drawn to objects that embody chance.